Welcome back to the It's Bigger Than Me podcast. I'm your host, Molly Trotter Gomez. I am very excited to be introducing to you the editor of the Kingdom Alliance Publishing House. And honestly, we were just talking, Elizabeth and I, there's so much more that you do than just being an editor. I mean, what they have done in the books that have been published through Kingdom Alliance Publishing House, the anthology, I'm like, y'all are magicians. I'm like, the way you get these words to just really wrap around your heart and to connect with people is absolutely incredible. And I can't wait to go through this process myself to have a book or two or however many to be written. But I brought Elizabeth Hambelton on today because she is just incredible at what she does, but just an amazing person overall. And so I'm excited to have you on the show, Elizabeth. Before we dive into just this book project and what's ahead for the publishing house and all of that, I would love for the people at home to get to know you and your background a little bit more.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. What's interesting is actually my very first job out of college was at a publishing house in an art museum, which is interesting because, as Molly knows, I do a lot of branding work. And since I was in an art museum, but publishing, that's where I learned about both branding and the publishing side of thing. We did coffee table books for a major art museum, like the traveling exhibitions and stuff. And think of like the really fancy coffee table book. And then we would do kind of other stuff too, the website, a members magazine, all kinds of stuff. So it's actually there that I got my first real taste of professional publishing. And I think what's interesting is that for both branding and publishing, it's really about bringing a story to life and sort of helping people see the story that's in them. Because I think a lot of it's about confidence. Like the editor process is kind of a midwife process of helping birth something that's kind of inside, but people don't totally know how to get it out and get it healthy and get it to be ready. And that's kind of what the editor does.
Gosh, the midwife process. I love that you like brought that into like the description of what it is that you do, because I've heard from many of the authors on our anthology project, for example, like they were hearing about their experience with it all. Just, yeah, I really had to go back and think and reflect and dig. And then the way that our team, you probably specifically were able to dig in and even just pull out just more depth. Like talk about that process a little bit, because I feel like that part is honestly, it's probably my favorite. It's like the ones that really dig for that treasure. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like to joke that if you like your editor the entire time you're writing your book, that's not a good editor because I think of an editor as kind of like a personal trainer, right? Like no one loves their personal trainer in like the middle of the workout, right? They're like they don't tell you, "Hey, you did one sit up. That's so great." Abs for days, right? They're like, "No, I know like it's kind of hurting. We got to keep going. We got to retry. Like your form's not good. Let's improve." And
Yes.
I think of that personal trainer is kind of what the editor does for writers. It's that person who obviously we want to do it gently and we want to do it with kindness, but who gives that little bit of both tough love and encouragement to say, I see the potential here, but it needs a little polishing. It needs a little work. This is where we're going to do it. And then just really guides you through that process. And we actually do 2 rounds of edits on most of our books for Kingdom Alliance and definitely for the anthologies. And they're very different. There's actually 2 rounds. There's what's called developmental editing, and then there's copy and line editing. And developmental editing is when you're working on the development of the story, it's the ideas, and you're not super worried about grammar. If someone has a consistent thing that they kind of do that's a little bit quirky, we'll say. And by quirky, I mean not correct grammar. If it's something consistent, I will point it out in developmental and be like, hey, your comma usage with 2 independent clauses is a little idiosyncratic. And this is what we need to be doing. So when you're going back and rewriting, hopefully it can be better. But mainly, developmental is not about grammar. It's about ideas. It's about extending metaphors. It's about kind of themes and through lines. And does it make sense? It's so easy to mention people in books thinking that you know them, so other people know them. But if I just mentioned Tommy right now on a podcast, you don't know if that's my child, my boss, my husband, my dad, right? Like, who is that person? And people who aren't as used to writing can do that a lot. They bring in references or cities or things, and we're like, why is it important that you went back to Seattle? Had you ever been there? Like, were you born there? Like, what's going on? And so just helping people see their own writing with fresh eyes is developmental. Once that's kind of a little bit more firmed up, we go into copy and line editing, and that's where we really dig into the nitty gritty of sentence structure and grammar.
I love that. And you remind me of like, that always drives me nuts in a conversation. And I'm like, what is this? Like, what is that? Like, I don't like you brought that up. Like we should all know. And so I find that in
Yeah.
conversations where I'll ask that, I'll be like, so the significance is, oh, well, let me tell you. And so, yes, it happens to people all the time. So I love that though, because like you said, our brains, lots going on up there. So outside perspective, hey, let me keep fishing to make sure it's a complete thought. So people are in it with you, and it being really succinct and impactful. I'm curious from your perspective on just this process so far, whether it's just in general, if you've ever, edited anywhere else or even here with our Kingdom Alliance Publishing House projects and books, what is your favorite part? Like, what is one thing that you look forward to when it comes to like digging into editing people's stories?
I do really like the developmental side because it's just where you get to know the author more. Honestly, the grammar is fine, and I do have a very type A personality, so it is kind of satisfying to kind of check, check, check and make it all just right. But grammar is a little drier, and usually people aren't that into that side. The authors find it a little drier too, and I get it. It's nitty-gritty, it's details. But you don't want bad grammar to take away from your credibility or your influence because people read it and think, this is so messy. This person doesn't seem professional. And so I think that's why it is really important. But I really do like the developmental side because that's where you get that creative flow. I was an art major in school. It's really where you have a little bit more flexibility. You can tie in the metaphors and you can just create a whole world on the page. And the process of that I think is really fun. And you do really get to know the author through that. You hear a lot about their life, about their story, get into their voice because we all express our stories so differently, and getting into each author's kind of mindset and where they're coming from is part of developmental. And so that's the part I think I probably like the very best.
Elizabeth, as I hear you talk, I'm just like, who wouldn't want you as an editor? I mean, come on. You want somebody who's this passionate, this like, let me help you really express who you are on these pages to have it come to life. Like that is a gift. That is a gift. That is a talent. And that is the person that you want on your side. So I thought it was so funny earlier when you were like, yeah, if you really like your editor all the way through it, then they're probably not the one. But I also like that as well, because you're not going to hire a trainer or a coach. And I mean, think about, kids that are learning football, for example. It's like if you had a coach being like, nice try, son, like, good job. No, whistle blows. We need to do this because if you don't make this move, this happens, and then we lose the game. And we're not here to lose the game. So I love that aspect because you want to have people that are in your corner to push you to make this the best. Otherwise, why are we even doing it? So I just love that passion and zeal that you have for it. So another question that I had for you, Elizabeth, was, there's so many exciting things that are happening here inside the publishing house, the Author Academy here at Kingdom Alliance. What is a vision maybe that you have, or it's a piece that you're excited about, since this is in the very beginning stages of what we're building here? Like, I would love to see it from your perspective of what you're excited about.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really cool about Kingdom Alliance Publishing is that we are offering both anthologies and we'll call them full books. Because for a lot of people, they feel like there's a book inside, but it can be, I admit, a daunting process. It's not something you're just going to whip out overnight. It's an investment of time and energy and all kinds of things. So it's cool that some people may want to jump in at that anthology level where you only contribute a chapter and get your feet wet, get used to the process. Maybe that's all you ever do. Maybe you do that as a starter and then you go on to do a full length book. And I like that there's an option for both people. My first published work was in an anthology, and then I've gone on to write full books. So I think it's a great way to just get accustomed to how do you go about writing a book? What is involved? Like, how does it all come together from the cover design to the writing to the formatting? There's a lot of steps to the process that the average person wouldn't know. So I like that you can jump in at different levels and, kind of find whatever fits for you.
I love that too. Cause I mean, the whole like, I remember when I attempted, and this is it's in the archives of my Google Drive somewhere that will be resurrected at some point. But I had this vision for this book and I sat down, I wrote it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing. And then when somebody was like, well, how many words is it? And they're like, that's not a book. That's like maybe like a PDF online. I was like, are you kidding me? This is like my life's work, all these. Anyways, because I'm not very long winded, I just kind of try to get straight to the point. That's just how I usually talk. So I'm like, okay, how do I expand this thing? And so it's funny because a chapter so doable, right?
Right.
There's a lot of work that still goes into it, but not as much as a full book. So it's like dipping your toes and getting your feet wet. Also, if you want to self-publish or have a full publishing team, obviously we have a lot of those resources here for you. But I love that you mentioned that because it really can open up the possibilities for quite literally everyone. And like you said, so many of us are like, I feel like I have a book or something inside of me.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because a chapter will teach you a lot about your style too. We have had authors who are like you and they're like, oh my gosh, I like barely hit the minimum. And then other people that were like turning in twice the word count and we were like, oh, we got to cut way back. So you don't always even know where you fall on the spectrum until you give it a try, like anything else, right?
Yes, totally. Well, I'm excited to dive into that process more, even personally, because I mean, come on, like you have experts around you, like Elizabeth, Camille, Michelle, Lemon. Like the team is just incredible here. Like, come on, you're looking for the team, you found it. Here it is, and so we're so grateful to have you, Elizabeth. As we wrap up today, is there anything else you'd like to share with us?
No, I think it's just that I encourage everyone to believe in themselves, believe that your story has worth, that you don't have to have, I don't know, won the lottery or gotten a gold medal or done these crazy things, that there's really so much value in the everyday stories of our lives because they're more relatable in a lot of ways to other people. And just to know that like your experience, strength, and hope is worth sharing with the world. And if you feel called to do it, don't wait for that day when you feel splashier, because a lot of times just an authentic story, well told, is going to move a lot more hearts than something that feels overly aspirational. So just, believe in yourself, believe in your value, believe in your story, and share it with the world.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Elizabeth.
Of course, thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. It means the world to me that you would lean in, listen in, and be able to hear the value that's being shared on this show. Don't forget, if you love this episode, rate the show, leave me a review, be sure to share it with a friend, and don't forget to tag me on social media. I will definitely be giving you a shout out. Also, come say hi, drop in the DMs. I would love to be able to hear what stood out to you the most on the episode and if there's any topics that you would like to hear on the show. We'll see you next time.